This week on the New to You show, we're continuing the theme of childhood. We'll talk about a Lake Wobegon story by Garrison Keiller called Tomato Butt, and an episode of the Nickelodeon show, The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the New to You show. I'm one of your hosts, John Holt. With me this week is...
Mary Varn.
Adam Moerder.
And Keith Vincent, one of your other hosts.
All right, so this week we're continuing our theme of childhood. We will probably have a new theme next week, but this week we have two new segments. One segment is discussing my pick, a story from a Prairie Home Companion, specifically one of the News from Lake Wobegons that Garrison Keiller tells, a short called Tomato Butt. And the other brought to you by...
I'm bringing to the table a wonderful episode of one of my all-time favorite shows called The Adventures of Pete and Pete from Nickelodeon from the 90s. And it's going to be great. You should listen to us talk about it and then watch it, or watch it and then listen to us talk about it. I don't know.
So, Mater, do you have anything new this week?
I do. I saw another movie that everyone has seen except me called Casablanca.
Oh, wow.
Or Casablanca. Yeah, I finally saw it. And my girlfriend was away, so I just watched a lot of movies.
I hope you saw it colorized, right? You don't want to watch the old version.
You got to watch that with your girlfriend, man.
I know. But, no, I watched it in black and white. Their colorized version was
It's not that romantic, actually, Keith.
I think
it kind of isn't. He's Bogey's pretty, like, you know.
No, it is romantic.
It doesn't
Because
end that way.
he's strong.
He sacrifices everything. All of his romance.
Well, it's
even
romantic because he and
want nothing
Renaud walk off together, and he's like, "This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship."
Yeah,
No,
and he
it's-
knows that Sam's waiting at home for him.
No.
Piano.
But they don't choose romance, and
They don't choose
were
it,
correct
but it's still
to
a
choose.
romantic movie.
What?
Yes,
That's
they don't.
true.
He doesn't choose to follow his urges, but it's still an amazingly romantic.
And the
movie.
plane is full of ticks, Romanian ticks. So it is.
Why ticks?
Because they're Roman ticks. You see how that works, Keith? I learned that for Bad Hair
yikes.
Day.
Man, it's getting late in here.
It's grandpa humor.
Well, I would say, I mean, not to jump on your thing, but that is a movie that everyone knows and loves and deserves to be. It truly is a masterpiece.
Yeah,
I mean,
as
it
good as
stands
everyone
up.
says. I agree.
Yeah, and every time you watch it, it's just every line is so clever. It's just so perfectly done.
I was not let down. It's very good.
So, Keith, was anything new
Yeah,
to
it's
you?
new to you.
Let's see. Yeah, I started couple new jobs. I've been and through that I've been researching clear line style of illustration, comic book kind of style like Hergé from or Hergé. I'm not sure exactly how you say it, but the Tintin author and artist. So it's that kind of style. Chris Ware kind of works in it. So I've been neck deep researching that, and it's finding some really neat stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. And how about you, Holt? Anything new?
I have been reading and watching a lot of Doctor Who. So reading the TARDIS Wikia and reading a lot of that backstory information. And
So that's new? You haven't been into that in the past?
I had watched it before, but I think I'm starting to fall down the rabbit
obsession.
hole.
Why
I'm
not
starting to
get
get
into
into it
Yeah,
really
and
heavy.
that's kind of new to me. You're getting me into the Doctor Who thing. So, and I am not committing to the whole thing. I'm starting with the Matt Smith Doctor Who, and then
Dr. 11.
I'll work my way in both directions from there.
But one of these episodes, I'll pull you guys in and we'll watch some of that. So yeah.
So
That's
that
what's
will be
new to me.
the new to you theme of things we don't need to do.
Yeah, it'll be like
like,
what's new to you? Oh, John locked us in the apartment for 3 days, and we watched all of Doctor Who with toothpicks holding
Well,
our
I
eyes
was
open.
kidnapped this week, John.
Hey, please let me go. Yeah. So, what's also new is that we are going to record this show and get going.
Well, sir, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, Minnesota. It's been rather warm all week and rather dry as well, so that the grass is brown where there is no shade, and whenever a car comes down the county road, why, a big cloud of dust boils up behind it. The dog days of summer, what we called them, and it was about this time in the summer when we used to clip our old dog Buster. He was a long-haired dog.
This week, I'm bringing to the table a short story narrated by Garrison Keiller, which is from the NPR Public Broadcasting Radio program, A Prairie Home Companion, specifically the News from Lake Wobegon. And the version that I had when I was younger was a cassette version in a collection that was called News from Lake Wobegon that had a cassette for each season, and on each side were a number of short stories. So this was on that collection, and for me, before even going into the content, just this short series reminds me of childhood for me personally, because this was something like, I think my grandmother had purchased this, and when we were visiting her, like, I would listen to it, and whenever I visited, I'd usually end up listening to this, and she eventually gave it to me. And, I was pretty young when, it was in the 80s when we were listening to it, and it was one of those cassettes that I wore out and definitely played through, and they're just good, sort of like, the stories in these Lake Wobegon stories are pretty wholesome, and they're good stories, and they usually touch on aspects of life. And this short, specifically Tomato Butt, touches on childhood and summers and that sort of quiet time when you torture your siblings, which was something that we pretty regularly did to one another.
Not to interrupt you, but I since we're on the nostalgia train, when you got the tapes, were they in a puffy plastic thing like the Disney VHSs used to be?
These ones they were in a little cardboard box deal that had a little paper.
It wasn't a collectible thing where the three tapes on each side?
It wasn't like one of those things you buy that's like, how to get ahead in life. Buy my 56 cassette series and you will figure out how to sell oil to dogs.
I'm very disappointed that it wasn't, but carry on.
Yeah, so that was how I got into it. Had you guys heard this story before?
No.
No.
I hadn't heard this story, but it's interesting that the Garrison Keiller songs, the Garrison Keiller stories are a part of your childhood, something you would recommend from your childhood, because they very much are a major part of mine. My dad used to work side jobs on the weekend, and we'd go on construction. And so we'd work real hard, out in the sun, building room additions or whatever, digging holes and ditches. And on the way back, if we got finished early enough, it would always be at the same time as the Prairie Home Companion would come on. So it's very warm memories for me. Very, very. I just love it. Yeah, and I still am super nostalgic for that show. I love hearing it. It's odd because it's nothing that I seek out, but every time I do hear it, it's such a special thing. And we did go see it live a couple years ago, John and I.
It was really good.
But especially, they would always cap off with the News from Lake Wobegon. It was always kind of the crescendo of the show, and that I have always, his voice, everything about them, they're just so warm and very. They're legitimately funny. They're very clean and wholesome usually. So even if he says something like "but," it seems very. You get wrapped up in the world. So when he does come out and say the word "but," you feel like, oh my gosh, he said "but," and you could tell that he's speaking from that 12-year-old mischievous place. But that's I'm super familiar with Garrison Keiller.
All right. So I guess we'll walk down. This short is, it sort of flows naturally like a lot of his tales do. It just tells about sort of a slice of time in the character's childhood, when he's, it's summer, they're out picking crops. It's August when all the plants are coming out, and so the gardens are in full bloom, and their work turns into sort of play where they're throwing things at one another, and finally they, the sister who shouldn't be a target becomes the target, and they get in trouble, and that's sort of that's the gist of the tale. But the
way it's told,
the way it's told
is
in the
magic.
focus. I mean, I definitely told it faster and therefore better. Like, it's better to be faster.
Yeah, obviously.
So you guys know the story now. You don't need any of the fluff.
Yeah.
So
And they're just throwing old rotten tomatoes at each other, so it's pretty harmless. It's not.
yeah.
They're not throwing like yard tools.
No,
or-
that's what
or
we
rakes
did
or-
after hearing the story
Yeah.
as kids.
So what did you think of it? Anybody?
Well, I did not grow up with Garrison Keiller or Prairie Home Companion. I didn't know about it at all, I think, until I met you, John. And I hadn't heard this particular one until recently. But yeah, it's super charming. It made me, since you were introducing it, it made me think about your childhood, because I know that you come from a mini sibling family, and I know that you fought a lot. So I sort of cast you in the role of the character, and your sister Frances as the role of the sister. Although I know Frances was probably not as obedient as the sister is in the story, but yeah, it's super charming, and he just tells it really great in a way that appeal to your senses, and he talks about the heat and the air conditioning and the tomatoes, and how, these are real tomatoes. They're not the, like, those things they strip mine in Texas, which I love because I hate yucky tomatoes.
All right. What about you, Adam?
I think I learned, this is really sad, but I learned about Garrison Keiller probably from, I think he was like a Family Guy episode that parodied him or something. That's just like the saddest thing in the world, the fact that that's how I learned about him. But I remember like a car trip once to Massachusetts from here, and we listened to him on NPR for a while or something. And that was actually like my only, real exposure to him. But what I love about this story is there's a classic in the Mater Family Home Videos collection. There is an episode, if you will, where I'm probably the same age as Keeler in this story, and we're in Long Beach Island, New Jersey, in this like, I probably only like 5 or 6 or 7 maybe feet of water, and my sister and I are like found that there's this like muddy sand at the bottom, and we would curl it up into balls and throw it at each other, but
almost like clay.
Right, exactly, like clay. And we had boogie boards, so we would like, block it and be like, haha. And this is all being video recorded, and the camera kind of like zooms in on my sister, and whoever's filming, I think my dad is just like, Morgan, say hi to the camera, blah, blah, blah. And it is so perfectly timed, it's as if it was storyboarded, but she turns to look and she's like all like, ha, ha, ha. And this like glob of mud comes from off the frame and hits her square in the eye. And this is like an pretty old camera, probably like a 1990 model or something, but it's filmed so well that you can play it in like as slow-mo as it can get, and you can just see the glob frame by frame like hit her in the eye. So yeah, it reminded me a lot.
Did she cry?
She cried. She then threw mud at me,
Yeah.
then like ricocheted and hit like my grandfather, who was enjoying a beverage by the side of the water, and then he gets upset, and yeah, it's a very funny video.
It's like a Ray Stevens song.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's funny that you're bringing up the childhood thing, and I believe this is bringing up more childhood memories than any of the other things we've discussed. Oddly, I don't know. Maybe we're just diving into
Did you
them.
bring this up because you said you listened to it when you were a kid? Does it also make you think of when you fought with your siblings?
Yeah, I mean, also too, just the tone of summer and being. He has a couple other really good stories within this summer
Just a couple,
collection. Though. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, there's it's a selection of stories, and they're strong stories, and there are a couple more that deal specifically with children in the summer. There's a really good one where it's a kid playing with ants, and this whole like world that he's creating, where he's effectively torturing these ants. Like, what if he's like, oh, there's a little ant here, and these ants are like weird. He's playing with it, and it like hurts its leg. I'll help it. Blah blah blah. And he's like, uh-oh, what if the ants like grow big? Will they remember me? What if they like grow really big and remember that like I hurt his leg? What if they like grow way too big and destroy us all? Maybe I should like kill them all. So it's just a sort of evolution. And then his friend shows up. He's like, what are you doing? He's like, nothing, playing with ants. And they're like, come on. So it's sort of that fantasy childhood world being broken apart. And it's just that movement to movement childhood thing. And this story, the Tomato Butt story, is another slice like that, where you have, you know, you can just see kids sitting on the porch listening to the neighbor's air conditioner tick away and going and whining to their mom, who's like, she's tired of the heat and blah, blah, blah. It's all common.
It's visceral.
And standard. It's something that, you know, I've lived through, because it's not a unique story, but
it's
that's
almost a universal thing. That's
Right.
What's good about a good story. If it could, you know, make you visualize your own experience. I mean, obviously it's
Right.
good. I listen to a lot of podcasts of storytelling podcasts, The Moth, Risk. There are a bunch I listen to, probably about 4 a week. But no one I mean, he's the best. Garrison Keiller is the best. I mean, there might be some that I've never heard out there that are better, but out of any I've ever heard, I mean, he's got it down the pace, and he's been at it so much
Right.
longer than everyone else. But his pacing, he doesn't generally do voices, but any little thing he does that would introduce a new character, it just works so well. And the words he uses, they're so like Mary described, they're just so visual. I mean, the guy's just a master. He's a master at making you lean in and listen almost.
Right.
You know, like you're a little kid and you're just waiting to hear. You're hanging on his words. And
well, I think too, you had that dead spot where radio faded, and so you have more visual storytelling with television, but Prairie Home Companion and Garrison Keiller, I mean, it's on national public radio, so it's got a forum or whatever and an audience, but it just kind of maintained. And now a lot of those storytelling, maybe there's a renaissance. I don't know if you call it that, but that sort of audio, you know,
definitely
mouth word to word,
spike.
has kind of like resurged because of.
Well, I think that a lot of the resurgence of or whatever you want to call it, this new wave of storytelling, I think it's all coming out of the comedy. A lot of it's coming out of the comedy world. Mm-hmm. It's almost like a byproduct of the one-man show or one-person show kind of aspect. But they definitely all have a thing or two to learn from Garrison Keiller. I mean, the guy is he's better. He's better than them.
Did you guys have like professional storytellers come to your school?
Yeah, we did, definitely.
Yeah, we did too. I wonder if they still do that in schools these days.
Did you have that, Murder?
I think so. Wait, what did they?
Like
They're
just
like,
some
they tell me like, and then I got pregnant and I had a child and I'm only 5 years older than you.
That's why you don't play with guns.
Yeah.
And that's why you always leave a note.
Yeah. And
no.
this is what a bong looks like. Don't use it. Like all the storytellers.
Oh,
that
so the
came to our
DARE
school.
program.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it would just be, you know, a person who was really good at telling stories to little kids. And sometimes they might have puppets, but a lot of times there was no props or anything.
Mm-hmm.
They were just, they were like Garrison Keiller, just really good at telling a good story.
And yeah, I remember in the 80s when I was in Cub Scouts and scouting and things, there was a tradition of, you know, there was kind of they're keeping the tradition alive. There was that kind of aspect to it. And it's funny, when I just went home recently, and this guy who was a really great storyteller, he does this show called the Heartland series on Bill Landry in Tennessee. He does a show called the Heartland series. And he was a really good, he would come and visit the scouts and stuff and tell stories. And he's a historian as well. So there are a lot of his stories were based on history and things. But there really is that's such a skill. I mean, there's speech making and there's, you know, speaking in public. But I feel like there's so many subtleties to good storytelling that, you know, a lot of people are good at it and a lot of people think they're good at it. But, you know, once you get someone who just can make you hang. That is something. That is something that's very special.
Do you think there's a reduced exposure? I mean, is the exposure in younger kids, in kids who are children or whatever, in teens, is the exposure to storytellers like more reduced even than we didn't have tons of access to it, but do you think, if parents are they still listening to the NPRs and is it more just there's TV and there's the internet and
well, I feel like a show like we're doing and so many internet shows, podcasts, whatever you want to call them, that people are listening to more voices than ever before. I feel like even with the people bemoan the death of radio, I feel like there's still more to listen to now than there ever has been, and I believe that will just continue. So it's just like old people always get together. Oh, kids these days, they don't get this, and they don't have respect, and need a haircut, all that.
But there is a certain point where the technology is going to shift away, and something is going to pass out or take on a form that does that no longer, they just don't have it like that anymore.
Well, but then we'll be beaming messages right into our brains, so it doesn't matter.
But there's so many kids
taking a pill that tells a story.
Mm-hmm. I saw Lawn Mower Man.
There's so many kids these days, though, who aren't allowed to watch TV. Like when I was a kid, maybe this was just my parents, but they were like, watch however much TV you want. They didn't care because it wasn't really a thing yet of a problem of kids watching too much TV. And now that it's a problem, it's like more clamped down on. So maybe parents are even seeking out more of these older fashioned ways of storytelling and, reading.
Well, it's funny. I know several kind of young parents our age now, and they do say, well, I only allow them X amount of hours a week of whatever, but they still hand them the iPod, and you only get X, you only get X amount of 4 hours a week, but you get unlimited iPod hours. So the kids are still, it's still consuming some media. Yeah. One way or another.
Yeah, I just think that as more media is available now, parents are more conscious of how their kids consume it.
If they can afford to be.
Yeah. Sure.
Otherwise, they just consume it.
Otherwise, they're bad parents.
Yeah, because they have to work for a living.
Dumb working parents.
Yeah. Come on. Where's your trust fund now? Yes.
Why don't you make a successful podcast like this so you can live off of that, you dumb,
come on.
lazy people?
Raise 1 million illegitimate children like us.
Oh, well, great pick, Holt.
All right.
It's a very wholesome pick.
Yes.
I find it hard to believe that... I know you very well, and I find it hard to believe that you listen to something so wholesome and that it influenced you as a kid.
Oh, you guys didn't backtrack it? Like, if you listen to this thing backwards... I don't think they'll let us even post the podcast if I tell you it's backtracked.
I don't have megabytes to encrypt that MP3 file.
Yeah. Find your parents. Get the scissors.
Tomato butt.
Tomato butt. Make them look like a tomato. All right. So this was Tomato Butt, a short story from News from Lake Wobegon, specifically the summer part of the collection. You can find it on iTunes. I don't know if it's on radio or Spotify, but maybe. It's probably on CD. You can get it off of the NPR store. I think right now there's an archive of Prairie Home Companion that you can watch online. So if I find links to that, I will post it for you guys if it still exists.
And if it's legal.
And if it's legal. So again, 1983 is the compilation date release for this cassette, but it may predate that a little bit in terms of air date. But it may not have been new, but hopefully it's new to you.
Vegetables. I was not about to go outside again. If I did, I knew darn well what I'd find to do out there. More tomatoes. This is the time of year when the gardens start coming on hard and fast in Lake Wobegon. And when gardeners start to feel that vegetables are taking over their lives, that they started something out back of the house that they're not in control of anymore. They planted a glacier out back there. It's moving in on them. Their tomatoes moving in.
There comes that terrible moment every year when daylight savings time ends. Some rat fink takes away that extra hour, and your fading memories of summer finally disappear. Some people get sad, but not my brother Pete. He knows that on that famous hour-sucking day, you get to time travel. In the spring, you spring forward, but in the fall, you fall back. That means that at midnight, you get to go back in time.
Our theme is childhood, and so I'm bringing to the table and plopping it right down. The Adventures of Pete and Pete from the 90s, from Nickelodeon, Viacom. In my opinion, this is probably the greatest television show ever made for youngsters, for kids or whatever. It never spoke down to people. It was just the perfect show. It had the all the anxieties and things that young kids and teenagers are dealing with, but it handled it in a way more clever way than anything else. But in particular, I'm going to discuss the episode from the second season called The Time Tunnel, which is I'll give you a little rundown of the show just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. But The Adventures of Pete and Pete are about two brothers, the Wrigley brothers, both named Pete. So, right away, this is kind of a surreal show. Everything in this show was very surreal, but it dealt with very realistic coming-of-age issues. Most of a lot of the subject matter involved Big Pete, who's becoming old enough to not want to do the childish things that he used to do with his little brother Pete, and the mayhem that occurs because of this. So this was a Nickelodeon show. When I was a kid, everything good used to come on. All sorts of great stuff used to come on Nickelodeon. There was just show after show every weekend. They were always good. And then when Pete and Pete used to started off as a little short that you would watch, you'd catch it in between as an interstitial between episodes of other shows, and finally it got its own show, and it was just it ranks up there with Mystery Science Theater 3000 for me. It was just super influential. And you should go watch it. I have a lot to say about it, but I'll save it for discussion mode. And so now I'm going to turn the microphone around and see what other people have to say about the show, and if they had watched it before or anything. So what do you think, Holt? Were you familiar with this?
This is one of those shows where I don't know if I ever watched all of them, kind of thing. I've seen this one more recently, and I think this is the first time that I've actually sat and watched it on its own, not in series with the others, kind of thing, where I was able to isolate it and watch it. I don't think I saw it. If I did, I don't think I saw it in its entirety when I was younger. So it came out this aired in 94.
But you had watched episodes, or
yeah.
Okay.
I'd watched the show, but again, this aired in 94, so that's getting into high school a little bit. So I'd watched the earlier episodes more than I'd probably watched the season 2 stuff or whatever.
So you were too cool to watch a Nickelodeon show when you were in high school?
A little bit.
Well, I was in college and I was watching it.
It was good. It was really good. I mean, it was one of those shows where you would seek it out, definitely. But I didn't. We didn't have DVRs. We didn't have all the access. So when you got other stuff going on, it's harder to sit down and get to it. But it was definitely. It was a highlight. It was one that I always remembered. And then when people speak fondly of that 90s Nickelodeon good television, when cable had good TV for younger people, that was one of the shows that people talk about. The early Cartoon Network Adult Swim stuff like Space Ghost, and then you had your Pete and Pete's and stuff on Nickelodeon, and that was it. Was it Kabloom or Kablam? The stuff, the Action Squad.
Oh yeah.
Stuff that was all contemporary to that. Just really strong, good content at the time. And this episode, really liked it. You get in the show, basically what happens is Pete's longtime friend who he has.
So traditionally, the two Petes when daylight savings time comes to an end, they would always want to. You get an extra hour. You get to travel back in time for 1 hour every year, and for them, this is a major thing. This kind of gets into the heart of the show, where we as adults, we kind of forget how intense everything is at that age. So the build up for something like this for someone their age is so meaningful, and a lot of the crux of this particular episode is that little Pete still builds up to it, but Big Pete completely forgot about it. But there's so much comedy in the build up of this time travel thing. You have to eat 3,000 of your daily percent of riboflavin for it to work. So the kids are just eating cereal,
right? And you need to like get their riboflavin. Deodorant on yourself to close your pores.
Yeah. But those are the kinds of details that always made that show so special, I feel like.
But then Pete's arc in that is that he's asking his friend, this girl, out on a date for the first time, like to be dating, because that's his turning point.
Yeah, they're in a weird like friend zone thing.
Yeah,
where he doesn't know what's
so his sort of like, he's trying to be as like letting the universe make the decisions for him kind of stuff. So it's still the same surrealist games that he's playing, that his little brother's playing, but now he's applying it to these like older, more maturing subject matters. And so even though he goes and talks to his buddies about girls, they're like riding on like a quarter operated horse or whatever. Right. And it's when the school bus pulls up, because he's like said, all right, if a yellow school bus comes in, or yellow car comes up, it's meant to be. It's boom. And so all these signs line up. And so he sort of is feeling euphoric. But that's when he runs into this bully who for some reason lends him his car
because he wants to play
he wants to kind of like, and it's sort of the Endless Mike though is kind of, it's not too clear if Endless Mike is against him and her getting together, if he's just kind of like...
No, he's trying to sabotage it. Endless Mike is trying to sabotage his first date. That's why he's telling him, like, yeah, you want to get it really steamy in the car, and you want to make a move on her, and you really want to,
it almost seemed like Endless Mike, though, was like, this is how I would do it if I ever did it with a lady, and so this is what you got to do, and when it works, man, I'm going to come check it out, and it's going to be awesome. Like, that's how I kind of read it.
Well, maybe it could be either way.
But it's again, he's a surrealist character, so it's like... It's probably both.
Yeah.
And he's just a weird dude, and it's a weird world. So the date, of course, is sort of sabotaged by Mike and goes awry, and time travel, he's able to fix it or whatever. But so he thinks, we won't spoil it for you. But that's about it.
Too late.
Done. But it's really good. Also in this episode is Abigail Jones.
From Grease, from Grease 2.
And Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh, yeah.
And she was also more recently in Pushing Daisies, that series. It was a pretty good series. She was like
She was Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors.
Yep.
Yeah, she wasn't in Grease. She was in Little... Yeah.
Same difference. They both have lightning.
Suddenly Seymour
is riding Grease lightning. So, yeah. See it? No, because Seymour, she's the motorcycle. In the second Grease movie is what you're talking about.
Oh, she is the motorcycle.
Yeah.
Her name's Triumph.
Yeah.
But the reason I chose this episode is because there's an episode that aired 2 episodes just before this about a heat wave that I was really wanting to do because, man, oh man, it's been hot around here. But I felt like the Time Tunnel episode had the perfect encapsulation of everything you needed to understand the world of Pete and Pete. It had the really bizarre grown-up characters. It had Endless Mike, the forever foil of both Petes. It had an interesting mission, super surreal mission that little Pete is on, and it had the perfect example of coming of age that as Big Pete is dealing with. Okay, now I'm gonna, I got to start thinking about dating, and my best friend. I think what, today's the perfect day. I'm just gonna try it.
Right.
The gravity, there's definitely less gravity today. It's the perfect day to ask her on a date. And I just this particular episode, like I said, just has it all.
So, Mary, what'd you think of this episode? Had you seen it? And
No, I missed Pete and Pete completely. I had never seen an episode ever until this.
Man, I'm starting to think Mary must have been cool growing up because she didn't do any of the nerdy stuff that we did. She
No,
wasn't into.
I watched Star
She
Trek: The
played
Next
Magic.
Generation.
did you hear about the box children? There was this whole like generation of children who were raised in an iron box, like individually, and they weren't not in the same box, but each one had a box, and then they were just released into an urban environment at like 21, and that was
wow.
it. And they were just like feral and weird, and
But they can draw.
yep. And
Mary's one of them.
Mary's one of those.
A box
An
child.
iron box child.
Yeah.
Children
No,
of
that's
the
not
box.
true. Skinner
That's
box.
not true.
It's not true.
Oh, gosh.
Sorry, yeah. Just because she's square shaped,
Cubic.
cubic.
Yeah.
But no, so Mary.
You don't have to agree with
I don't know. I watched Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place, Star Trek: The Next Generation, My So-Called Life, Beavis and Butthead. That's what I was doing. But yeah,
Clarissa explains it all.
no. I was maybe a little too old for
Pinwheel?
that show or something.
Hey, dude.
Yeah, I watched Pinwheel.
Saved by the
Salute
Bell.
your shorts.
Salute your shorts.
No,
Arnold.
no.
Can't do that on television.
Yes,
Rocco's Modern Life.
no.
Ren and Stimpy.
Yes. Well, sort of. I caught it.
Doug.
Yeah. No,
Rugrats.
no.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
I didn't watch The Simpsons.
You didn't watch The
Oh,
Simpsons.
you didn't watch The Simpsons.
No, because I was in that. Because that was the phase of our family life where we didn't watch sitcoms anymore. Really, it was like,
You just watched Dynasty over and over again.
what is that, soap opera?
That was an 80s, a primetime
Houston.
soap opera.
Yeah.
And they were
Kind of like
Dallas.
Kinda like
Dallas,
Dallas,
But yeah, but I don't know. I think I would have liked the show a lot if it had been, thrust in front of me and I had time to watch it. I really enjoyed this episode.
You should
I mean-
watch more. They're really great.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it is about these two guys, so I don't know if because, when you're younger, you tend to be more gender centric, I think,
Yeah,
in what
that
you
makes
seek
sense.
out. But I still think I would have liked it. I did watch Beavis and Butthead, so. But yeah, I love this episode.
Yeah.
But Endless Mike shows up in a bunch of shows.
Oh, cool.
And that's one of the things I wanted to bring up too is just the language that they use on that show. And I'll get to you, Adam. Sorry, I don't mean we were discussing Weird Al last week, and I talked about and always I'm finding myself thinking of this a lot more lately about words and the choices people make to which words they use and such, and just the wordplay in that show was always so great. Some of the names were some of the bad guys. There was the first bad guy was named Open Face. Then there was a kid named Hat Head, and then there's Endless Mike. Kind of carried on for a really long time, but then in the third season you got a couple new guys like Pit Stain and Paper Cut, and these were just all like the bad guys, and that's not even discussing the mail carriers' names or any of these guys, but it's almost like the writers always tried to push it a little bit further into surreality. I had an argument once with some writers on a show I was working on where there was some device where it was a nose machine that can sniff stuff from way out, and they called it the like Sniffer 2000 or something like that. I'm like, guys, you got to really like push it a little bit. There's room for some comedy there,
Mm-hmm.
And I forget, that was one of the few arguments I ever had with the writers, but they ended up calling it like, well, then we'll call it the Sniffer 3000 or something like that. I was like, oh,
That's a newer
that's
model.
a lot
come
funnier.
on, what's that?
Because it's like more future. Because like
Yeah,
they
it's
wouldn't
way funnier.
They would make
3000 is funny because we were not at that year yet.
Yeah.
But I was like, I was trying to find a way to say, maybe you can make it like so that it can be like super nose something, so it spells out schnoz or something, just bring it to another level. But they always did that. Anytime Little Pete would always get really angry at stuff, and he always had the best insults or something, and he'd always say something like, "Get out of here, cheese plug." Just the weirdest little combinations of words that just sound right. They just sound. And he'd say stuff like, "You're nothing but a yellow bruise." Just these weird combinations of words. He always said blowhole all the time, and it would have been really easy to just say butthole or jerkwad or something, but they always came up with something just a little out of left field, and I feel like they did that with the with so much of it. But so Adam, what did you think?
Nice. I didn't like love this show as a kid. I don't know if I was too young or it was just like a little too weird or something. I probably was like still watching mainly cartoons, and I feel like the show was on like a little later than everything. And I just remember, like, I totally remember, because I remember the one episode where like Mr. Swirly or whatever his name is goes missing.
Yeah,
that was a cliffhanger or something like that.
I think Michael Stipe was in that episode.
Michael Stipe. Yeah. He's a replacement or something. Yeah.
He's a morose ice cream man.
Yeah. So I totally remember like the show, and I must have watched it a lot, but or I remember watching the show, but I don't remember details of the show at all. So, but I remember a year or two ago I remember revisiting this with you guys and watching a couple episodes. Basically researching for another TV show we were doing. And it's so good. It's like the perfect mix, like you said, of just the stupid like, oh, daylight savings, you're traveling through time, but then just like running with that riff and not having any care. Like, and I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, at no point a character's like, no, you don't actually travel through time. You just set your clock back. But like, I don't know, you're like so in the like a kid's head that the universe just like plays by those rules, and that's what I loved about that show. Without anything like nothing really crazy actually happens. It's always just like weird. Like I think Mr. Swirl. I don't want to spoil that episode, but I feel like he just
go ahead and spoil it. It's like 30 years. It's
was he
what,
like
25 years old?
Well, I don't remember, but like I feel like he was like on vacation or something, or like something stupid like that. But they're like, oh, the ice cream man's missing. Like this is like a government conspiracy, or like who knows? And so that's really good. And then of course, like there was always that, like Big Pete is always being pulled apart by Little Pete because he's older and he's like, into girls or into being cool or whatever, like stupid high school stuff. Which I was like I always liked Little Pete more because I was closer to his age and was like didn't care about high school. Like I remember trying to watch Welcome Freshman. Was that on Nick?
I feel like it was. I don't remember that specifically, but I
remember just being like so uninterested in that show. Just like everything they're talking about makes no sense to me. Like I don't.
Is that the one with Murph and the Murph Tones?
I can't remember.
Welcome Freshman. I feel like I do remember that show.
But yeah, I think the show's like pitch perfect in terms of like getting kids.
As well, I mean, for such a young show too, it uses so many great things that we've come to kind of take for granted in a lot of shows. They definitely weren't the first ones to kind of have the narrator. All the stories are told through the eyes of Big Pete. He narrates it. And just if people watch Scrubs and like Scrubs, it's a lot like Scrubs in that there's narration along the way, and it's always Zach Braff's character, and there's almost always a moral that you learn along the way. In fact, Scrubs, I feel like takes I shouldn't say it takes a lot from it, but it follows up really well because it's not like Pete and Pete invented any of this, but what's the Callista Flockhart show that used to be on? Ally McBeal, I feel like it feels this surreal. It has those kind of surreal moments. There are a bunch of shows that I might not have been influenced by it, but having grown up with Pete and Pete, I always was like, oh, it's like Pete and Pete that they,
Right, the perspective's so subjective and so much like in the protagonist's head that you don't feel like you're watching a real accurate portrayal, but it's like emotionally accurate, and I think that's great.
But it's called The Adventures of Pete and Pete. Specific episode is the Time Tunnel. And just a list of, I've got a long list of people who were in the show over the years over the few years it was on that I can mention, but I think I'm just gonna leave that for maybe on the website or something. But the Time Tunnel episode of The Adventures of Pete and Pete from Nickelodeon / Viacom back in the day. I love the show, and you could watch Two seasons are on DVD. Unfortunately, the third season hasn't come out on DVD, so I don't know how you can ever watch that.
Yeah.
Maybe the Library of Congress.
People
or something.
put the stuff on YouTube, so if you want to hunt for it, you may be able to find it before someone pulls it.
It's there.
So we won't post any links to that, but you can purchase it on Amazon. I'll look and see if there are any links to where you can purchase it on iTunes or any other like video streaming site. I'll put that there as well. But yeah, it looks like Paramount or whoever would be responsible for putting out the DVDs will not be releasing the third. They took it off their docket of stuff to release. So
we're not posting links to YouTube things that are of dubious legality.
Well, I don't know. I mean, basically, if you can go buy it somewhere, you can go find it. Whatever. Like,
yeah, it's just as easy to type "The Adventures of Pete and Pete" as it is to click
right,
on a link.
Because honestly,
us.
you may find a better playlist than what I'm giving you, anyways. Yeah. So, but yeah, this is a good pick. I enjoyed watching this show.
Yeah, I didn't even mention how great a music is on that show.
Yeah.
I mean, just wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
But,
well, who does the theme?
Polaris, a band called Polaris.
Nice.
Yeah, really good stuff.
Thanks, Keith.
So before we jump off of it, though, I did want to. What do you guys think of this versus Malcolm in the Middle?
I never watched Malcolm in the Middle.
Oh, well, you know what? That's funny. I didn't put those two together. That's very, very similar in ways. I like Pete and Pete way better.
Yeah,
but
I would too. But you had a similar. It was more of an full range. You had another like middle child is your narrator in this instead of the older child.
Yeah,
and it shows all the family's trials. There's a certain level of surrealism, not as crazy, but maybe a little cartoonier.
It's like I Love Lucy, sort of like that sort of wackiness in a live action sitcom. Yeah,
and another sort of like indie pop band doing the We Giants did the theme. So there's that.
Did they really do the theme of I feel like that just sounds like them.
No, it's them
on Malcolm in the Middle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yep, it's them.
You're Not the Boss of Me Now.
Yep, that's the We Giants.
One more thing about Pete and Pete, filmmakers out there, watch it. There's so many tricks that they do, just from storytelling and filmmaking and the camera work, lighting. There are just so many tricks that you could learn just from watching the show. It's so well made, so cheaply made too. Yeah. So go out and see it.
Cool.
Yeah. So again, Pete and Pete, Time Tunnel episode 1994 air date. Check it out.
Season 2.
It may not be new, but hopefully it's new to you.
I mean, yes!
My destiny was in motion, but Pete's was still sucking wind. His time travel dream had always been for us to do something so legendary that they'd immortalize the moment with a souvenir slidey pen, like the one he got at the Alamo. But without me there beside him, he wasn't exactly sure what to do.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this episode of New to You Show, where we talked about the theme of childhood. We brought to you the
Tomato Butt by Garrison Keiller.
Oh yeah, and Pete
story.
and Pete Time Tunnel was the other one we brought.
Some good stuff.
Yeah, so I was your host this week, one of them, John Holt. You can find me at Lord Joho on Twitter.
I'm Mary Varn. You can read my comic at npccomic.com and find me on Twitter at Mary Varn.
I'm Adam Moerder. You can find me at adammoerder.com. That's Adam, Moerder.com.
And I'm Keith Vincent, one of your other hosts. You can find me on Tumblr blog at earthlingkeith.tumblr.com.
All right. And you can find out more about the show and the content herein with links to that and pictures at newtoyoushow.com. And you can also follow the show at New to You Show on Twitter.
So also, if you guys have any ideas, reach out to us.
Twitter may be the
Wanna
best
hear
way to
from
get
you.
back to us on stuff.
There you
Definitely message us through there. Ask us questions.
Just
We'll do our
don't
best to
yell
answer.
at your computer, though. That's not going to work.
You can try.
No, just don't do it.
It's something new to try.
Especially at
I
work.
recommend it. So again, thanks everybody for listening to this week's episode. It was hot and we did our best to talk. So it may not be new, but hopefully it was new to you.
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this whole of existence. I know it takes time, but I'm losing my persistence. The distance is too far to fetch, so I sketch on pages and hope that some catch the thoughts of my inverted worded music. No trial and error, just emotion when I do this. Focus on each beat, more so than you wasting time in front of your television. Maybe I'm faking it, cause I don't have the proper amount of cash or the latest clothes.